There's been quite a tradition of adventure books with maritime themes and settings. Think of the Horatio Hornblower novels of C.S. Forester, or Moby Dick for that matter, or the adventure stories of Joseph Conrad. Of course, all those tales took place on the surface of the ocean. The man Anthony Mason is about to take us to meet is a writer of tales that take place below the surface.
On New York's East River, a small boat cruises back and forth beneath the Whitestone Bridge, bouncing sonar waves off the river bottom.
Here's the lane we're going to run. Here we are, see, coming in on it?
The leader of this expedition is an adventure novelist by trade, but Clive Cussler is on a personal adventure. He's searching for a sunken ship.
Mark 420. We're looking for, everybody thinks we're crazy, we're looking for a small submarine that was built by John Holland, called the inventor, creator of the modern submarine.
The submarine went down somewhere in these waters on a cold night in 1883. It's never been found.
Because the submarine's only 16 feet long, so it really is the proverbial needle in a haystack. Did you get something?
Little target.
Yeah,
that was about
just a little bump.
It was about 10 feet off the line there too.
They spend days sweeping back and forth, but the lost sub eludes them.
We didn't find the submarine where it was supposed to be, which is usually the case. They're never found where they're supposed to be.
But then the writer who raised the Titanic has never gone where he was supposed to go. In fact, Clive Cussler might never have become a writer if he'd listened to his wife Barbara's verdict on his first book.
She wasn't really impressed. In fact, I think her words were, "Don't get your hopes up, nothing will ever come of this." I've been told that most of my life. In fact, I was told early on, don't write adventure, adventure doesn't sell.
The exploits of Cussler's seafaring hero, Dirk Pitt, have sold, are you ready? Some 90 million copies around the world. In his recent book, The Sea Hunters, Cussler finally told the story of his own adventures at sea.
You dedicated the book to your children, who you said grew up with a father who never grew up.
That's true. They all laugh about that. I've never really grown up. I still, and I'm lucky with a wife who's kind of the same way. We'll still go out and try and rollerblade and kill ourselves and bungee jump when I'm 60. I rode a bicycle to LA when I was 50.
Cussler's first job was running a gas station, Clive and Dick's Petrol Emporium, before he became a successful advertising executive. He was 36 when he decided he'd like to write a paperback adventure series.
And I thought, what can I do that's different? Well, I thought, okay, you don't have a secret agent, you don't have a spy, you don't have a detective. So I had this marine engineer who gets into all kinds of mischief, and all the books are based in and around water. And that's how I came up with Dirk Pitt.
I can't thank you enough for all the joy you gave me.
Oh, well, thank you. My pleasure.
Cussler's success as a writer has allowed him to indulge a passion that developed back before he was pumping gas.
Did you know when you started buying cars that it was going to end up like this?
Not a clue, no. Never thought about it. Just all of a sudden you buy one, you buy another one.
On the outskirts of Denver, he's filled a warehouse with his collection of classic cars.
So most of the time you find these in semi-derelict condition?
Generally.
Yeah, and restored?
This one was in very poor condition when I bought it.
Cussler still remembers the first car auction he went to when bidding on a rare Hispano Suiza reached $50,000.
And I sat there, all of a sudden, my God, I'd never written a check for more than $500 in my life, and all of a sudden I just bought a $50,000 car, and I broke out in sweats, I started to shake, and then all of a sudden it hit me. My God, I can afford it.
He owns 82 antiques now.
So what do you do with all these cars?
Oh, well, some of them I must admit is like painting on a wall. You can look at them. But the nice thing about a car that I can call up the guys that maintain them for me and say I want to take out the Buick, or I want to take out the Cadillac or the Duesenberg.
Ah, yes, the 1929 Duesenberg.
Since the engine's been all rebuilt, she should get up there towards 110. which is really excellent when you consider the weight and this massive front end with the wind resistance.
When you look at the car collection and you look at the amount of searching for shipwrecks you do, it's
Hey,
got
what do I write? Yeah,
you're right.
That's why I say writing to me is an occupation. I mean, I enjoy it. I got other interests. I mean, there's at least 60 days out of the year I'm out looking for shipwrecks.
Cussler's profits from Dirk Pitt pay for these adventures too. Some years ago, the search team decided it needed a name.
So at first they said, well, you're paying for this, we'll call it the Clive Cussler Foundation. And I said, well, I've got an ego, but it ain't that big, so I nixed that.
So they gave it the same name as Dirk Pitt's fictional employer, NUMA, the National Underwater and Marine Agency. So far, they've located 60 ships.
What was your biggest thrill in that score?
I suppose the Hunley, the Confederate submarine, the Hunley.
In 1864, the Hunley was the first submarine to sink a warship when it torpedoed the Union sloop, the Lusitania, in these South Carolina waters. But the sub itself went down that night, along with its 9-man crew. Over 15 years, Cussler and his NUMA team made 4 expeditions to find the Hunley, searching more than 1,200 miles. In May of 1995, the needle on their magnetometer finally jumped. They had found their sub.
This looks like the hatch right there. It was covered 3 feet in silt. That's what made it so difficult. You had to use a magnetometer and go right over it.
NUMA does not raise the ships or keep any artifacts. Cussler's only trophies are the models he has made of his finds.
And ultimately, you have nothing to show for it except the satisfaction that you can say, I'm the guy that found it under the water.
That's true.
And that's plenty.
It is for me. I suppose there's a satisfaction of knowing you always be a little footnote in history. You know, that's about it. But no, it's strange because if we're successful, then curtain comes down, and I start in on the next one.
Mr. Clive Cussler, would you please come forward?
This past year, the State University of New York's Maritime College awarded Cussler an honorary degree. At the same time, first his book, The Sea Hunters, then his novel, Flood Tide, hit #1 on the bestseller list.
I think the big kick to me was I'd never been first in anything, and then to have 2 books, you know, the nonfiction and then the fiction, both #1 in the same year after 32 years, that was quite a thrill. But it may never happen again, but I had my little moment in the sun.
And they told him adventure books would never sell. After 32 years, those books are still paying for Clive Cussler's adventures.
It happened last week, the discovery of a long-lost treasure of the deep. Nearly 2 miles below the surface of the icy Weddell Sea, archaeologists unearthed the wreck of Endurance, the vessel from Ernest Shackleton's fabled expedition more than a century ago. In 1914, Shackleton and his crew set sail for Antarctica. But their ship soon encountered ice drifts, which eventually encircled and crushed it. Endurance sank, and the men floated on sheets of ice for 5 months before reaching a remote island. From there, Shackleton and 5 men set out for help. They sailed 800 miles in a lifeboat to the nearest known whaling station, and then sailed back to rescue the remaining men. Of the 28-man crew of Endurance, not one perished. And as the ship reappeared on the seabed some 107 years later, its name was still emblazoned on its stern, a monument to a remarkable band of explorers whose epic tale of survival endures to this day. We're taking a dive into history this morning, 75 years after a life-or-death battle off our eastern shore. Mark Strassman leads the way.
slide it, bud.
This story begins with a dive into history at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
Topside, topside. This is Nomad. Request permission to open vents and dive.
It'll take about 10 minutes for this two-man submersible named Nomad to carry pilot Randy Holt and me 715 feet down to the ocean floor.
Down we go.
Sonar guides us through the darkness below until we see this.
Confirming we have a visual on the target.
It's the German U-boat U-576, which has rested here since July 1942. The submarine was sunk while hunting cargo ships headed for Europe in the war against Hitler's Third Reich. This U-boat had vanished, lost to history, until researchers discovered its location 2 years ago.
So the submarine is lying on its starboard side. We're looking at the keel all along here.
We were there last August as human eyes saw U-576 for the first time in 74 years.
There's the anchor right there.
Its bow is unmistakable. You can make out the deck gun. A school of grouper guard the sub's conning tower. You can even spot the periscope inside.
The circular pad, which is called the Winter Garden, right in the middle of it is the aft deck gun.
NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, photographed and scanned the sub to create a 3D model. Here's why. U-576, where we are now, sits just 35 miles from Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. A relic of a little-known chapter in World War II history.
Vitally needed tankers are hit, burned, and sunk, victims of prowling enemy submarines.
NOAA Superintendent David Alberg studies maritime battles.
Within like 3 weeks of the attack on Pearl Harbor, Germans were beginning to sink ships off the East Coast.
That's the war coming right into our backyard.
Precisely.
In 1942, U-boats dominated the East Coast shipping lanes. More than 80 cargo ships were sunk, and 1,600 lives lost in the waters off North Carolina alone.
And you could look right out here and see battles.
Absolutely. You'd find oil on the beaches, you'd find debris, you'd see the fires at night, and unfortunately sometimes they'd even find victims, remains that had washed over from some of these merchant seamen and sailors that were lost.
Most Americans then never learned the scope of the attacks, but coastal residents knew. The War Advertising Council helped teach them one of the war's most enduring sayings.
So this notion of loose lips sink ships. If you talk, somebody could die because of your careless conversations, really began to gel with the American public.
93-year-old Louis Siegel remembers loose lips really could sink ships. In 1942, he was an 18-year-old cadet midshipman with the Merchant Marine Academy. U-boats attacked his convoy 3 times. We met him on board the research vessel, the Baseline Explorer.
When you watched that first ship in particular go down, it must have brought the reality of the threat home to you.
Right. I guess when you're that young, you know you're going to live forever.
And you have, which is the good news.
Right.
Dive 1 will be in Nomad with Randy piloting.
Underwater archaeologist Joe Hoyt is leading the expedition to study not just U-576, but also its target, the cargo ship Bluefields. Both sank on July 15, 1942, in a convoy battle lasting just minutes. Today, predator and prey lie side by side on the ocean floor, only 240 yards apart.
Both of them together, that's really what's unique about this particular area, is that we have the remnants of both elements of a convoy battle. And it really encapsulates that idea of a battlefield.
Everyone aboard Bluefields survived, but no one knew for sure what happened to the crew of U-576 until the expedition team saw this. All of the U-boat's hatches are sealed. 45 German sailors are entombed inside.
There's one particular picture of these guys in the conning tower and they're looking through binoculars, and one of them's got sort of a goofy pair of glasses on, and that guy's binoculars are in there. This guy's glasses are probably inside this steel tube that we found.
Shipwrecks like these represent how close World War II came to mainland America, which is why NOAA is working to make this graveyard part of a national marine sanctuary.
When I see this area, whether I'm on the surface or we're down underneath, I see Gettysburg before it was designated as a national park. I see Shiloh, I see Antietam. This is our opportunity to say publicly and acknowledge that the people that fought here off the coast of North Carolina and the U.S. East Coast, that effort is appreciated and it will be remembered.
It's a chance to give these guys a salute.
Absolutely. A salute that's well-deserved and 75 years late.
The Bermuda Triangle is the infamous grave for any number of ships, some filled with a fortune in treasure now buried under the ocean floor. Lee Cowan steadied his sea legs to take us on a treasure hunt.
Carl Allen. He's a fisherman's fisherman. He's been coming to the Bahamas since he was 12, never missed a year, to this small island of Walker's Cay, where he likes to say the bonefish meet the billfish.
There we go. All right, a little blue runner actually there.
But as an adult, it wasn't really fish that brought him to this southwest corner of the Bermuda Triangle. It was the legend of a long-lost Spanish galleon.
I am a treasure hunter. I fully admit it.
The Nuestra Senora de las Maravillas, Our Lady of Wonders, was the kind of treasure ship that would have even made the pirate Blackbeard blush. On board, untold riches, plundered from the Spanish New World. But on one dark January night in 1656, disaster struck.
There was some miscommunication. The Maravillas turned, and the other ship turned, and it rammed the Maravillas midship. These are probably from salvage efforts of the Maravillas by the Spanish.
Michael Pateman is curator of the Bahamas Maritime Museum in Freeport.
And it went down how fast?
Less than an hour.
Ever since, her cursed cargo has brought wealthy treasure hunters flocking to these waters.
One of the large cannons was found.
In 1972, adventurer Robert Marks stunned the maritime world by pulling up artifacts that confirmed basically all the rumors about the Maravillas were true.
Some people claim it's one of the richest Spanish galleons to go down in the New World.
What treasure they found ended up mostly in auctions and private collections the world over. In 1999, the Bahamian government had had enough of treasure leaving its waters and put a stop to all of it. But marine archaeologists like Jim Sinclair insist the main pile of treasure has yet to be found.
Do you know how much is left out there?
If you're going to just use dollars to quantify,
yeah,
we're probably looking at well over another $100 million still sitting in the sand out here.
Really?
Hmm?
Which, for Carl Allen, was like the siren song of the mermaid.
If we don't do this, Mother Nature gets it, or pirates, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
He made his money in plastics, garbage bags mostly, and in 2016 he sold that multi-million-dollar company in Dallas and then announced to his wife that he was going fishing, this time for the Maravillas.
So I immediately bought her a yacht for her birthday. And let me tell you, you want to get your wife into yachting? Name it after her.
That's Gigi, their super yacht. Their son Thomas says Mom is indeed pretty happy.
I think she likes it down here better than he does. You can't get her out of the water. It's amazing.
But the Gigi was just a start. Allen also bought this 183-foot research vessel and all the support boats to go with it. He hired crews, he hired divers, most of them local. And then he started searching for a home port. Instead of just fishing Walker's Cay, he decided to buy that too. The island's deep channel became the home to his own private navy.
Everybody thought I was wrong. So many people called me a fool, a laughingstock, and they're not laughing anymore.
Look, holy cow.
With his wife Gigi at his side, Allen Exploration has recovered more than 10,000 artifacts from the Maravillas.
When I found it, it was so encrusted, I could see just little
bright specks.
Pendants, gold chains, silver bars, crucifixes, all seemingly no worse for the wear.
Oh my gosh.
It's a 20-carat cabochon cut emerald in the middle. There's 12 emeralds, we believe, one for each apostle.
They don't like to talk about what all of this is worth because they have no immediate plans to sell any of it. The Allens funded the construction of that maritime museum. They also run it themselves because they believe the Maravillas treasure belongs in the Bahamas. And, well, so do they.
Come on, Cash.
They're full-time Bahamian residents now. Walker's Cay, well, that was abandoned until 2018 when the Allens bought it and started fixing it up. When Hurricane Dorian ravaged the Bahamas, they offered their treasure hunting fleet to deliver relief supplies instead.
From what I'm seeing off the stern of Reaper.
It was that same year that the Bahamian government lifted the moratorium and granted the Allens exclusive rights to survey some 250 square miles of underwater desert.
Lee, we are just behind the hole, so there will be a swim upstream a little bit.
They were generous enough to host us at sea, but they also put me to work. To dive with the Allens is to disappear into an underwater scavenger hunt on a long, dead reef. It's tedious work. The conditions have to be perfect, and it's not without its dangers. But I can say firsthand their passion for the hunt is infectious.
Oh my gosh, you found those just on this dive? It's the last dive. These are nice, big, chunky, what you call pieces of 8. And they'll clean up really nice. Right now, you can see the oxide on there.
But despite this massive effort, the ever-shifting sands of the Bahamas are still the boss.
You could have the right equipment, which I built. You could have the right people, which I have. And then Mother Nature says, no, not today. It's going to be her that'll run me out of this business.
Mother Nature?
Yeah.
But she's not beaten him yet. The pull of the sea is as strong now as it was when he was a boy. And it's anchored the Allens to the Bahamas in all the best of ways.
We love doing it, and we're helping these people at the same time. Where do you sign up for that?
More than a century after its tragic end, the Titanic is still sharing its secrets with, among others, our own ship Reed.
In the movie Titanic, the characters played by Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet spent some intimate moments in her elegant suite.
This looks familiar.
Yes, well, this is the first class suite from the Titanic, from the 1997 movie, Titanic.
Blockbuster movie.
Blockbuster movie.
That movie set now resides at the National Geographic Museum in Washington, D.C.
These are the actual props from the movie.
The actual props from the movie.
And there are plenty of real artifacts here, too. Catherine Keene, National Geographic's Vice President for Public Experiences, says the focus of the exhibit is the meaning and the mystery of the ill-fated ship.
Well, no mystery here. That's a deck chair.
That's a deck chair. Fascinating artifact. One of only 7 that still exists. The crew of the Titanic were just throwing these things overboard, hoping that the passengers in the water might have something to hold on to.
The exhibit tells the stories of Titanic's heroes, like Wallace Hartley and his 8-person band, who played until the very end.
His body was recovered with this beautiful music pouch, and it was full of some of the music that you see.
Is this
here.
the actual music he was carrying?
The actual music that he was carrying when he was recovered from the site.
Of the 2,200 people on the Titanic, more than 1,500 died, including 47-year-old John Jacob Astor, the wealthiest person on board.
This was the watch he wore with him everywhere.
His 18-year-old wife, who wore this life preserver, survived.
Why did he not survive?
Well, it's a sad story, but he was on the wrong side of the ship. On the side of the ship that he was on, they were only allowing women and children in.
So he was denied a seat on a lifeboat, even though there was a seat because he was a man.
That's correct.
For the time being, I shall require only women and children.
It was a horrifying 2 hours and 40 minutes before the Titanic disappeared beneath the waves. It then plunged more than 2 miles to the bottom of the Atlantic, where it rested unseen by human eyes for 73 years.
This is it!
But the sinking of the Titanic is no less mind-boggling than the discovery of its wreckage. In 1985, oceanographer and Naval Reserve Commanding Officer Robert Ballard stunned the world when he found the Titanic. But how he did it remained a highly classified U.S. government Cold War secret for decades. We met Ballard at National Geographic to hear the Titanic's untold story.
You did a number of very top secret naval missions during the Cold War.
I was a naval officer, yes.
Can you talk about them? Not at all?
No.
Only this one?
Only one be declassified.
The story of finding the Titanic starts in 1982 when Ballard was developing his own remotely operated underwater vehicle. Unable to get science grants, he asked Deputy Chief of Naval Operations Ronald Thunman if the Navy would help fund his project.
He said, all my life I wanted to go find the Titanic. And I was taken aback by that. I said, well, come on, this is a serious top secret operation. Find the Titanic, that's crazy.
Thunman said yes, but only if Ballard used the funds and the time to find 2 missing U.S. nuclear submarines, the Thresher and the Scorpion, that sank in the Atlantic in the 1960s.
So it was a deal. You'll let me do what I want to do, and if I'll do what you want to do.
This sounds like the real hunt for Red October.
Very similar.
The focus of this mission was to find the Scorpion.
They didn't want anyone else to find it.
Like the Russians?
Yes.
This was a really top secret mission.
It was very top secret.
Above top secret, I'm sure.
And so I said, well, let's tell the world I'm going after the Titanic.
The top secret part of the mission took longer than Ballard expected, so when he found the Scorpion and was finally free to look for the Titanic, he only had 12 days left. But his experience finding the Scorpion had been invaluable.
I learned something from mapping the Scorpion that taught me how to find the Titanic. Look for its trail of debris.
So you found it in 8 days, basically?
Yeah.
Because
people had taken 60 days and not found it. I did it in 8.
And how much time did you have left when you found? You had
4
days left
to film it.
And you couldn't go beyond that 4 days.
No, someone else had rented the ship.
That was it.
They didn't care.
Ballard still vividly remembers that moment when he first set eyes on the Titanic. But he also remembers how the mood suddenly changed.
We realized we were dancing on someone's grave, and we were embarrassed. And the mood, it was like someone took a wall switch, went, and we became sober, calm, respectful, and made a promise to never take anything from that ship and to treat it with great respect.
Because that was like grave robbing.
It was like you don't go to Gettysburg with a shovel, and you don't take belt buckles off the Arizona.
Catherine Keene says it's that sense of respect for the Titanic and its victims that gives it its timeless quality.
Why do you think, after all these years, people are still so fascinated with the Titanic?
I think there are lessons from the Titanic that we are somehow still compelled to want to hear. We're always pushing the boundaries of technology and exploration, but the story of the Titanic reminds us that there are great risks and tragedies that accrue to those ambitions. And there are also great stories of heroism and survival in this story that give us hope that maybe somehow we'll learn as a species from our mistakes.
Before air travel, the departure of a great liner was considered news, and Cunard's Lusitania was the greatest, the fastest, the most luxurious liner afloat on May 1st, 1915, as she prepared to leave New York City for Liverpool. It was news that the glamorous and rich Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt was aboard, a member of the Just Missed It Club, people who had booked on the Titanic but canceled at the last minute. And it was news that in the morning papers that day, Germany, at war with Great Britain, published a warning that vessels flying the British flag or the flag of any of her allies were subject to attack as they passed through the waters off the British Isles.
Even though it made no mention of the Lusitania, it was widely interpreted to be aimed at the ship. In fact,
Eric Larson is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Dead Wake, about the Lusitania.
the prevailing view was that the Lusitania was too big, too fast to ever be caught by a German submarine. And also there was this other idea that no German commander would try to sink it in the first place because it was a passenger liner.
But on May 7th at 2:10 p.m., in sight of the Irish coast, the Lusitania was struck by a German torpedo. Moments later, there was a second explosion. She sank in just 18 minutes. 1,198 of the nearly 2,000 people on the ship died, more than 120 of them Americans.
Yeah, you can see there she is rising in again now.
Yeah.
And we've just come up over the wreck and we're about to cross down to the other side now.
The wreck is still down there, in 300 feet of water. Boat Captain Carol O'Donoghue feels its presence.
Oh, you said you'd remember the tragedy of it all, really. Perfectly clear day, just like today.
You see nothing, just water.
All I could see was heads bobbing up and down.
For a 1994 documentary, National Geographic interviewed survivors of the Lusitania.
And it was like a half a circle of people moaning in the water. It was just a moan, a constant moan, and it gradually got less and less.
Owen McGarry has dived the wreck nearly 50 times. When you're out here, do you have feelings for what happened and what's down there?
When I look up at the surface, I can see bodies raining down. You can see what it was like. You can hear the screams.
The torpedo hit just behind the bridge on the starboard side. The ship tilted so far, so fast, only 6 lifeboats successfully made it into the water. Naval vessels in the area were ordered not to go near the site for fear they would be torpedoed too. So small boats made their way from Queenstown, now called Cove, 31 miles away. Some rescuers had to row the entire distance.
My grandfather raced down to the office, was immediately involved in the rescue operation, getting anybody who had a boat to go out.
Courtney Murphy's grandfather, Jerome Murphy, the Cunard Line manager in Queenstown, took charge.
He had to organize to commandeer rooms in the hotels where the survivors could be put up.
In this family photo, the small boy in the front row is Courtney Murphy's father, who watched as the rescue boats returned.
The bodies, as they came in the boats, would have been in whatever clothes they had on them, and then they were covered in shrouds or in sheets.
So your father remembered seeing
He remembers
bodies.
seeing lines of bodies being laid out here along the footpath, and that has an indelible memory for him.
There were 764 survivors. Among the dead, Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt. Today in Cove, there is a monument along the route the funeral procession took to the town cemetery, where the Lusitania dead were buried in mass graves. Mourners, as far as the eye could see, paying their respects. The pictures then and now, an eerie matchup. Was the sinking of the Lusitania just bad luck or something more sinister? Her captain, William Thomas Turner, believed she would have a British naval escort into port. None appeared. The British Navy didn't tell Captain Turner that U-20, the submarine that sunk her, was out there, something it knew because Germany's code books had been captured and then decoded at a top-secret facility called Room 40.
One explanation is that Room 40 was absolutely top secret, and by God, they were going to keep it that way. But another explanation is that it would not hurt the British effort if the Lusitania were sunk and Americans were killed, because it might draw America into the war.
Winston Churchill oversaw Room 40. Head of the British Navy then, he was on record hoping for an incident that would drag the United States into the war.
There's no smoking memo, if you will, that says that Churchill or the Admiralty deliberately put the Lusitania in harm's way. There is, however, a body of evidence that if you look at it, it is really damning.
No one has ever been able to inspect the underside of the wreck, where the answer to the question what caused the second explosion may lie.
These two items were recovered in 2011.
The Irish government has only allowed diver Owen McGarry to bring up artifacts that were lying on the sea floor or were in the bridge area.
This is a multi-beam image of the wreck. It's a sonar beam that's sent from a ship. It bounces off the sea floor. You could imagine the whole ship is lying on her side. The starboard side is underneath all that. And sadly, because she's lying on the torpedo wound, we can't see exactly, this is where all the carnage happened, where the torpedo strike and the second explosion.
McGarry, for one, doesn't believe the accepted conclusion that the second explosion was caused by the rupture of the ship's main steam line. She was carrying small arms munitions. But were there other explosives aboard?
I still think that there was, and she was carrying contraband. Something substantial caused that second explosion. And I do believe that there is somebody out there who does know.
Or not. The Lusitania remains fodder for conspiracy theorists.
It's the maritime grassy knoll. There are so many miraculous or nearly so things that happen that, it leaves room for people to say, well, that can't be it. I mean, here's this ship that sank in 18 minutes. It's just not possible, right?
100 years later, as time takes its toll, the truth only becomes more elusive.